The moment you decide to walk away and the silence begins, it creates a vacuum unlike any argument or dramatic exit. At first, it is met with skepticism. She is conditioned to expect a cycle, a blow-up, a period of tension, and then the inevitable return, often accompanied by pleading texts, grand apologies, and promises to change. She assumes your silence is just another move in the game, a more sophisticated bluff designed to get a rise out of her. She waits for the digital proof of your distress, the "I miss you" message, the late-night call, the angry paragraph that reveals you're still hooked. But the notification never comes. The days stretch out, empty and unresponsive. The digital space you once occupied remains starkly blank, and this is where the first flicker of doubt ignites. The absence becomes a tangible presence, a ghost that lingers in the corners of her daily life. The quiet she thought she wanted begins to feel unsettling. This silence is far from neutral. In the void of your words, it becomes a mirror reflecting back not you, but her. There is no longer your voice to argue with, your emotions to manage, or your reactions to use as a distraction. She is left alone in the emotional landscape she helped create, forced to sit in the emptiness and confront the reality of what she has done. The man she believed was a permanent fixture, a constant source of validation she could tap into at will, has quietly vanished. The control she thought she wielded was an illusion, predicated entirely on your willingness to participate. Your silence is the ultimate withdrawal of that participation. It communicates a finality that words could never achieve. You are not just gone for now. You are gone. This realization is terrifying because it is communicated through a language she cannot speak: indifference. She knows how to navigate anger. Anger is hot, passionate, and proves she can still evoke a powerful emotion in you. She can work with hurt, as it signifies a lingering attachment. But silence? Silence is cold and impenetrable. It doesn't say "I hate you." It whispers, "You no longer matter." This is an unbearable truth for someone who thrives on emotional feedback, for whom attention is like oxygen. Your silence is the sound of the air supply being cut off. The chaos she once fed on the reassurance, the conflict, the pursuit has been replaced by a still, calm nothingness. This is the first crucial crack in her confident facade, the beginning of a slow unraveling. The echo in the space you left behind is not of your voice, but of her own miscalculation, and it is only just beginning to reverberate. The foundation of her entire dynamic with you was built upon a perceived power imbalance. She operated from the belief that she was the gatekeeper of the relationship's status, that she could dictate the terms. A cold shoulder could be deployed to punish. A moment of warmth could be offered as a reward. She pushed you away to see if you would scramble back, and she pulled you close to reassure herself of your anchor-like presence. This cyclical testing was not just a habit. It was her method of control, and your predictable responses the confusion. The questions, the desperate attempts to fix what was broken, were the fuel that fed her sense of security. Your silence, therefore, is not merely an absence of sound. It is a fundamental rejection of the game itself. It proves that you were never a pawn on her board, but a player who has now calmly stood up and walked away from the table. The control she thought was inherent was, in fact, a privilege you granted, and you have now revoked it. This sudden and irreversible shift in power creates a cognitive dissonance that gnaws at the very core of her ego. The helplessness is paralyzing. There are no buttons to push, no levers to pull. Every tactic from her old playbook is rendered useless against a wall of quiet resolve. She cannot negotiate with your indifference. She cannot debate your absence. This triggers a frantic, often public, performance of nonchalance. She will fill her schedule, laugh a little too loudly with friends, and flood her social media with curated evidence of a life not just continuing, but thriving without you. Yet these are not acts of genuine joy. They are distress signals disguised as victory laps. She is performing for an audience of one, hoping against hope that her display of indifference will somehow penetrate your silence and force the reaction she craves. It is a desperate attempt to reclaim a narrative that is rapidly slipping through her fingers beneath the frantic activity. The silence creates a vacuum that no distraction can truly fill. The attention from new men feels hollow and performative. Their pursuit lacks the weight and history of your own. The parties are noisy, but the noise fades, and the silence is waiting for her when she gets home. She begins to understand, on a visceral level, that she cannot fight nothingness. She was a master of emotional jujitsu, able to use your own energy and words against you, twisting arguments and manipulating explanations. But your silence offers no leverage. There is no emotional energy to redirect, no words to reinterpret. You have removed the very material she used to build her world of control, leaving her scrambling in the void. This is the true power of your position. You have not defeated her in a battle. You have made the battlefield itself disappear. And in its place, she is left with the terrifying, echoing realization that the power she thought was hers was only ever on loan. And you have called in the dead. As the initial shock of your departure hardens into a sustained silence, a new and more insidious phase of torment begins. The absence of your voice creates a strange and painful paradox. It makes your memory louder. The mundane moments she once took for granted, the way you listened, the support you offered during a difficult day, the simple, unspoken safety of your presence, now return to her with a crystalline clarity that is almost cruel. The relationship she had begun to treat as a background constant is suddenly thrust into the foreground of her mind, but only as a relic, something already lost. She replays conversations, not to remember your words, but to hear the tone of care that was once reserved for her. The very kindnesses she overlooked become sharp, painful reminders of a resource she once had in abundance, but has now been permanently cut off from. This is the sting of regret, not for losing a dramatic love, but for taking a steady one for granted. Simultaneously, your silence plunges her into a state of unbearable uncertainty. When you were present, you were an open book. Your reactions were a predictable script she had studied and could manipulate. Your anger, your hurt, your pleas for reconciliation, these were all data points she could use to triangulate her own position of power. She knew where she stood because you were always telling her, either with your words or your actions. Now, the map is blank. Your silence is an impenetrable veil. She doesn't know if you are lying awake at night missing her, or if you are sleeping more soundly than you have in years. She doesn't know if you are angry, heartbroken, or simply at peace. The mystery of your inner world becomes a prison for her own mind. She is trapped in a loop of unanswerable questions. Has he moved on? Is there someone else? Does he ever even think of me? This lack of access is a profound loss of privilege. She is no longer privy to your emotional state, and this forces her to sit in a solitary confinement of her own making. Confronted solely with the consequences of her actions, there is no one to blame, no argument to twist, no narrative to control. The silence is a judge that allows for no appeal. It forces her to face the raw, unfiltered truth that her games have a final price, and the bill has come due. The chaos she once curated and controlled has been replaced by a still, quiet reality that offers no distraction from the one person she can no longer avoid: herself. In the echoing quiet, the only voice left is her own conscience. And it is relentlessly replaying the tape of every mistake, every push, every dismissal that led to this irreversible outcome. The sustained silence eventually becomes a pressure she can no longer bear, and the carefully constructed facade of indifference begins to show its first hairline fractures. This is when the testing begins. It starts subtly, almost imperceptibly, as a series of calculated probes designed to gauge the strength of your resolve, and, more importantly, to prove to herself that she still holds a thread of influence in your world. A sudden like on a social media post from months ago, a cryptic story update that seems tailored to your shared history, or the most telling maneuver of all, a casual, low-stakes text message. This message is always crafted to appear accidental or mundane, a "Hey, how have you been?" or a question about a trivial, forgotten item. The content is irrelevant. The subtext is everything. It is a fishing line cast into the silent waters, a desperate attempt to feel a tug on the other end, to confirm that your silence is a strained act and not a genuine state of being. When these probes are met with the same resolute quiet, the first true flicker of panic ignites. The failure to elicit a response is not just a rejection. It is a confirmation of her deepest fear, that her grip has truly slipped. Each unanswered signal is a direct blow to her pride, a silent referendum on her dwindling power. This internal panic often manifests as an external escalation. The performance of moving on intensifies. Social media becomes a stage for a heightened display of a perfect, vibrant life. Photos from parties she would have previously found tedious. Check-ins at trendy spots and hints of new male attention all become part of the broadcast. Yet, the performance grows increasingly frantic, its transparency revealing the desperation beneath. She is no longer just living her life. She is screaming her existence into the void you left, hoping the echo will somehow reach you and force the reaction she craves. Beneath this public spectacle, a private unraveling occurs. The digital world, once her playground for validation, becomes a source of torment. She begins to compulsively check your online activity, searching for any digital footprint, a new follower, a liked photo, a change in your profile picture that might offer a clue to your inner world. She scrutinizes these meaningless data points, trying to piece together the narrative she is no longer privy to. This is where the silence becomes truly maddening. It offers no raw material for her to work with. She cannot analyze your tone, cannot dissect your words for hidden meaning, cannot use your emotions as a mirror to reflect her own significance. Your peace becomes her prison. The calm you have cultivated on your side of the silence stands in stark, infuriating contrast to the chaotic spiral on hers. She is left arguing with a phantom, fighting a shadow war against an opponent who has peacefully withdrawn from the battlefield. The facade, no matter how brightly polished, is now a shell hiding a core of confusion and dawning regret. And the silence is the hammer that continues to tap, tap, tap against it, widening the cracks until the entire structure threatens to collapse. In the end, the most devastating truth she must confront is that your silence was never a tactic. It was not a game of hard to get or a punishment designed to make her suffer. It was and is the final, authentic expression of your choice. You have chosen yourself. This realization is what she is psychologically unequipped to process. She was prepared for a battle, for a negotiation, for a dramatic finale where emotions ran high and words were exchanged. She was ready for a fire she could potentially control or, at the very least, warm her hands by. But your silence is not a fire. It is a calm, deep lake, and its placid surface offers no handhold, no leverage. She was expecting a storm she could weather, but you have given her a drought, and in that arid stillness, the landscape of her own making withers. This finality is the core of the lesson that will be etched into her permanently. The silence becomes the ultimate teacher, imparting brutal truths that your words failed to convey for so long. It teaches her that love is not a guarantee, but a voluntary gift. It teaches her that loyalty is not an infinite resource, but a well that can run dry when drawn from, too often and with too little care. Most importantly, it rewires her entire perception of you. The man she may have once viewed as safe, predictable, or even needy is now revealed as someone of immense strength and discipline. Your silence proves you are a man who cannot be bent by emotional storms, who values his own peace above the temporary high of her validation. This is the very definition of a man who cannot be controlled, and in a cruel paradox. This is what makes him utterly unforgettable. The ripple effects of this lesson will shape her long after you have faded from her daily thoughts. It becomes a ghost in her future relationships. When new men raise their voices, she will remember your calm. When they explain themselves endlessly, she will remember your quiet resolve. When they chase her validation, she will remember your refusal to beg for it. Your silence and the self-respect it represented becomes the invisible standard against which all others are measured. And they will all fall short, not because they are inadequate, but because you set a benchmark of a man who valued himself. This is the final, unassailable power of your position. You are no longer a person she is trying to win back. You have become a principle she has internalized, while she spends her future navigating this new, unsettling awareness. You are already free. The silence that tormented her was the very medium of your own liberation. It was the space you needed to reclaim your energy, redirect your focus, and rebuild a life on your own terms. Anchored by the clarity that came from walking away, the power is not in her regret, but in your peace. The victory is not that she was haunted, but that you were healed. Your silence was the closing of a door, and on your side, there is no echo, only the quiet. Steady sound of a life moving forward, unburdened and complete. The chapter is not just over. The book has been put away, and you are already writing a new one.